You're a stranger. Get out of here now. Mysil, who had returned to her parents' house for a homecoming birth, suddenly shouted loudly. She never showed up for my FIL's memorial service and did nothing when my mill was having a hard time. Her abusive words trampled on all my efforts up until now. Even my husband, who was supposed to be my only ally, didn't help me at all. Instead, he scolded me like this. Shut up and follow my sister's orders. If you want to stay as a housekeeper, I'll let you. But sleep in the hallway. Whatever, if that's how you feel, I don't care anymore. I'm getting a divorce. It was the moment when all my patience turned into anger. My name is Iris. I married my husband, Matthew, 3 years ago. We don't have children, but I have a fulfilling job that I find rewarding. Matthew isn't very career-minded, and he often leaves work early to go play slots. When I get home, he's already back, reeking of cigarettes, lounging on the couch. He never mentioned gambling before we got married, though. After a while, he started asking me for money for slots. Just going to blow off some steam. I'm out of cash right now. I'll pay you back for sure. By the time a year had passed since our marriage, he started spending his weekends at the slots parlor. Naturally, he doesn't make time for me. The money I lent him for gambling, I hardly see any of it come back, but he was the one I decided to stick it out with. I never thought about divorce before. I tend to think negatively about everything. On the other hand, Matthew always looks on the bright side, thinking it'll all work out. That's a fact. He has been a big support for me. Whether it's about getting a promotion or starting something new, Matthew has always been there to push me forward. So, even though he got deep into gambling, I couldn't hate him. Fortunately, I earn a pretty good salary. Even though Matthew earns less than I do, we're both working, and we're not struggling financially. If gambling relieves his daily stress, I thought that was okay. Then one evening, I came home, but Matthew was unusually late. Overtime is rare for him, so I wondered what was going on. Around 9 p.m., he finally came home. I got fired. That was the first thing he said. I was shocked, at a loss for words. I struggled to find something to say. Well, times are tough nowadays. You'll find another job. We'll manage with just my salary for a while, and we have savings. I meant to cheer him up, but he didn't seem to appreciate my words. Don't act so high and mighty just because you earn more than me. You're looking down on me, right? Matthew said boldly, flipping through a job magazine. Although I was startled by his loud voice, it was good if he was eager to find another job. However, it seems he's more upset than I thought about me earning more than him. A few days later, he came up with this. I can't pay the rent, so we're going to move into my parents' house. Mom's been lonely since Dad passed away, so it works out, right? Does it mean we'll live with your mom? My voice cracked at his sudden statement. I'll pay the rent, so please rethink this. Suddenly moving in like this, you're going to make your mom uncomfortable. It's not like my mill and I don't get along. Quite the opposite, actually. My mill has always been very kind to me. She's a very sensitive person, always mindful of me in various ways. That's why I thought living together would be too stressful for her. But Matthew, disregarding my concerns, glared at me fiercely. Did you just say you'll pay the rent? So you're bragging about having plenty of money, huh? I rented this apartment under my name. I'm saying I can't pay the rent, so we have to move out. I can't stand you acting all superior anymore. I never meant to brag or act superior. I was just trying to help because we're a couple. We've always split the rent. I never knew he took so much pride in paying it himself. I don't want to provoke him further. So, reluctantly, I agreed to the idea of moving in. And so, our life at my in-laws' home began. As expected, my sensitive mill was very considerate towards Matthew and me. Taking advantage of that, he began to lead an increasingly slothful life. I found a new job, he boasted, but it was just a 3-day-a-week part-time job at a convenience store. This is my house, so no need to pay rent. As long as I have money to play, that's all that matters. On his days off, Matthew would leave early and get even more into gambling than before. As for me, the commute from home to work became longer, and my time to rest drastically decreased. Hence, my weekends turned into a cycle of work or sleep. One day, My mill slipped on the stairs and became bedridden. She said it was her own carelessness, but surely it was because she was too strained from worrying about us. I felt terribly guilty. I discussed my mill's situation with Matthew, but he was utterly unresponsive. I asked him to help on his days off from work, but he did nothing. Sometimes he wouldn't even feed my mill until I got home. I couldn't leave my mill in Matthew's care any longer. I was troubled. I considered taking leave for caregiving, but I knew it couldn't last forever. With Matthew not helping, I thought maybe I should quit my job and care for her all day. But living on Matthew's income alone for a family of 3 was out of the question. We had savings, but they would eventually run out. I knew about nursing facilities, but I didn't want to stress my mill by changing her environment. My whirlwind of worries must have been obvious to my sensitive mill. One day, she said to me, "Iris, I'm fine. Put me in a facility or whatever. Please don't quit the job you've worked so hard at for my sake." Her words were such a relief. Even if I chose caregiving, I wanted to make sure it wouldn't burden her. Considering using caregiving services, I consulted her primary doctor, who introduced me to a care manager, and Mill started attending a daycare. That gave me some peace of mind. Afterward, my Mill began using the daycare. When I was home, I took care of her. Unlike when I was troubled, I became more positive about my work and caregiving. My Mill expresses her gratitude almost daily for the care I provide. By the time a year had passed since we started living together, my Mill and I had developed a relationship much like a real mother and daughter. It was around this time that I heard Myl was coming back home. Apparently, she's 3 months pregnant. It seems she's had a falling out with her in-laws and hasn't even told them about the pregnancy. My Sil called saying, "I'm coming now," and a few hours later, she was ringing the doorbell. I led my Sil into the living room and served her a cup of coffee while explaining the current situation of the house. "I'm sorry to say this, but right now, there's no space for you to stay overnight in this house." "What do you mean?" I briefly explained to her that my Mill was attending daycare. My Mill was using the large room, and Matthew and I were using the other rooms, leaving no spare rooms. It's tough to turn away a pregnant woman, but considering post-birth, it really wouldn't be feasible here. My Sil had mentioned the quarrel with her in-laws as just a little argument, so I thought it better she go back. However, my Sil wouldn't have it. Then, she started saying this: "You're acting all high and mighty, but you're an outsider. If you leave, everything is solved. Get out now." I was disappointed by her words. Indeed, my relationship with my Sil has never been good. That's because ever since my Sil got married and moved out, she has hardly returned to this house. She only came back for my FIL's funeral. She didn't even show her face during the memorial services. It seems she was displeased with me running around helping at the funeral, acting like the good one here. I'm the real child of this house. That was the first harsh word my Sil threw at me. So I don't have a good impression of my Sil. And she probably doesn't think highly of me either. Yet, to be told to leave, it felt like all my efforts for my Mill were being dismissed in an instant. I was overwhelmed by indescribable feelings. Just then, "Yeah, I'm home," Matthew's voice came. He had been out at the slots since morning and had just returned. I went to the entrance, looking for some support, and briefly explained about my Sil. Glaring sharply, she said, "I'm living here from today. Matthew, you also think it's better if your real sister lives here instead of an outsider, right?" Then Matthew, as if pondering, looked up before uttering something unbelievable. "Yeah, you are right. Iris, just shut up and follow her orders." What is he saying? Shocked by his words, I was stunned. Wait a minute. What about my Mill's care? What about our living expenses? Who's going to do all that I've been doing? "It'll work out somehow," Matthew replied nonchalantly. "We have Dad's inheritance, and Mom has her pension. To be honest, I've been annoyed by you for a long time. Acting all superior because you earn more. Trying to suck up to Mom. It's actually perfect. Pack your stuff and get out today." After all this time of living as he pleased, leaving everything about my Mill, the house, and finances up to me. I was silently devastated, and then Matthew added insult to injury. "If you want to keep being a housekeeper here, I'll let you stay." But you won't have a room. Just sleep in the hallway. That was the moment all my patience turned into anger. All right, if that's how it is, let's get a divorce. What? Matthew was dumbfounded. If he thought he could say such awful things and not face divorce, that was even more surprising. You only saw me as a housekeeper, didn't you? But I am not just a housekeeper or your ATM. I'm your wife. If you talk to me like that, let's just get a divorce. If you don't want a divorce, then turn down your sister's request. Wait, just a minute. Matthew looked confused, but perhaps my seriousness got through to him as he compared Mysil and me and replied, "If you can't appreciate your family, then I don't need you. Get out now. Can't appreciate family. What is he talking about when he hasn't taken care of my mill at all?" I was so angry that I was beyond furious. Got it. So, we're going for a divorce, right? Fine. I don't want to see your face anymore. Just get out. With Matthew's agreement, I started preparing to leave. In my anger, I had blurted out divorce, but as I calmed down, I started worrying about my mill. I decided to put together a list of all the caregiving details like a primary doctor and care manager's contacts. Taking only the essentials, I said goodbye to my mill. "I'm sorry, I have to leave. I'm getting a divorce from Matthew. I'm really sorry, especially at such a hard time for you." Then my mill looked at me with kindness. "You don't have to apologize. Even though we're related by marriage and you're technically an outsider, you've treated me so well. I can't thank you enough. I've decided to go into a facility, so don't worry. From now on, please live your life freely. I'm rooting for you." Moved by my mill's warm words, tears welled up in my eyes. After that, I stayed with my parents for a while, then rented an apartment close to my office, starting a carefree solo life. Having a shorter commute and only having to take care of myself made me more energetic at work. The divorce was filed smoothly, and I began my new life in earnest. It was about a month after leaving my in-laws' house that Matthew started contacting me frequently. All his messages were begging me to come back home. It seems he had finally realized how hard household work could be. "Can you come back right now? My sister says I'm pregnant. I can't do anything. The house is a mess. Please help." Seeing these messages from Matthew, my only thought was, so what? I decided to ignore him. Persistent Matthew kept contacting me for months. During that time, I visited my ex-mill at the facility. Even just chatting about trivial things seemed to make her happy. According to the staff, it seems that neither Matthew or my ex-Sil had visited even once. Eventually, my ex-mill passed away at the facility. At the funeral, I witnessed something unpleasant. Just go back to your husband. If not, at least pay the living expenses. How dare you talk to your sister like that? You're not planning to hog all the inheritance, are you? Even at such a time, Matthew and my ex-Sil were having a public sibling squabble, oblivious to the fact that their mother had died and more concerned about inheritance and money. Not just I, but other attendees were taken aback by their behavior. How could such children have come from my ex-mill? Surely, most people were asking the same question. My ex-Sil had a lot of friends, and there was a large crowd at her funeral. On closer inspection, my ex-Sil was holding a baby. She had apparently given birth safely, but her husband was nowhere to be seen. After the funeral, I was stopped by a man named Martinez, a lawyer in my ex-mill's family. He led me to a room where both Matthew and my ex-Sil were sitting. They both gave me looks as if to say, "Why her? Let me read the will now." You could hear Matthew and my ex-Sil gasp at Martinez's words. Their attitude, as if they had been eagerly awaiting this moment, made me disillusioned all over again. The will states, "My 2 children shall inherit only their statutory share. The rest is bequeathed to Iris, who took care of me throughout her life. This provision will not change even if the marriage between her and my son has ended. However, if it is acknowledged that the children actively took part in caregiving, this will shall be nullified, and inheritance shall be based on civil law." I could believe what he said, and I was speechless. I had no idea that my ex-mill had prepared such a document. After finishing reading my ex-mill's will, Martinez sharply criticized Matthew and my ex-Sil. He chastised them for never taking care of my ex-mill and for not visiting her at the facility. among other things, like the argument they had in front of everyone earlier. Both of them looked down, silently taking the scolding. When the will is executed, Iris will also receive a part of the inheritance, Martinez stated, and only then did they break their silence. No way. I have gambling debts. I was counting on Mom's inheritance. That's right, I need that inheritance too. My ex-Sil chimed in Matthew. I have to raise my child alone, and I was planning to use it to pay alimony. What? Everyone was shocked at this sudden mention of alimony. It turned out that my ex-Sil wasn't just feuding with her parents-in-law, she had been kicked out for being caught cheating. Thinking she couldn't stay at her childhood home if the affair came to light, she had kept silent until now. Apparently, the child was from her affair, and once she announced her pregnancy, she lost contact with her affair partner. Anyway, I need the money. There's no money to give to outsiders. Iris, back off, my ex-Sil yelled in desperation. That's when Martinez, with a voice as loud as my ex-Sil's, commanded the room to listen. This is a legally binding will. No amount of fuss from you will change that, but we are the biological children. That's right, we have the right to the entire inheritance. Ideally, I wouldn't give you a penny. Be grateful you're getting the statutory share. But why Iris? She's not even blood related. You let Iris take care of your mother and never even visited her at the facility. How dare you say such things, you ungrateful brats. You should take a leaf out of her book. Then, both of them awkwardly looked down, and they didn't speak again after that. Later, the family home was sold, and the two ended up without a place to live. With no money to afford an apartment, they now live in a small room together. To pay off debts not covered by the inheritance, Matthew has significantly increased his shifts at work. My ex-Sil, too, is working hard, having placed her young child in daycare. As for me, my life continues as usual, calm and unchanged. My hard work at my job has been recognized, and I will soon be put in charge of a major project. I have no immediate plans to use the inheritance I received from my ex-Mil. Keeping my ex-Mil's words in my heart that she was rooting for me, I am motivated to continue